So, how old do you actually have to look to avoid getting carded in Oregon? I mean, you might be thinking, well, 21, obviously, right? That's the legal drinking age. But actually, no. Let's dive right into this because if you want to grab a beer or get into a restricted venue in Oregon simply looking 21, yeah, that's not going to cut it. You actually have to look 26.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're dissecting the anatomy of checking ID. We're going to completely demystify what actually happens, both legally and practically, when a server, a bud tender, or a bouncer hits you with those famous words. "Can I see your ID, please?" It is way, way more complex than just glancing at a birth year. And the legal weight behind that little piece of plastic in your wallet, it's absolutely fascinating. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to run through the age verification mandate, what counts as an acceptable form of ID, spotting a fake, the shift towards scanners and privacy laws, and finally wrap up with the good faith defense. Okay, Section 1, the age verification mandate. Exactly when to check ID. Picture the exact moment a patron walks up to a bar or a dispensary. What actually triggers the process of checking ID in the eyes of the law? Well, state statutes uses this term called reasonable doubt. But what does that actually mean in the real world? The Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission, the OLC, spells it out clearly. Reasonable doubt means anyone who appears to be under 26 years of age. So, here's the absolute crucial point. If the person pouring your drink thinks you look, say, 25 and a half, they are legally mandated to check your ID. It's not just a polite request, it is a hard statutory rule.
Moving right along to Section 2, acceptable forms of ID. What makes an ID legally valid?
All right, so you've asked for the ID and the patron hands you a document. But before we even get into specific card types, there is an official baseline set by the OLC. Any ID you accept must be unexpired, unaltered, government issued, and it absolutely has to feature a photograph, a name, a physical description, and a date of birth. If a card is missing literally just one of those elements, it cannot be used as standalone proof of age. No exceptions. So, what actually makes the cut here? There are exactly 6 standalone IDs that are good to go in Oregon. First up, your standard US or Canadian driver's license. Second, a state or province photo ID card. Third, an unexpired US military ID. Fourth, a passport or passport card. Fifth, a federally recognized tribal ID. And sixth, a Nexus or Sentry card. You know, those Federal Trusted Traveler Program cards. Now, notice what is not on this list. Student IDs? No way. Green cards? Nope. Concealed firearms permits? Definitely not. Now get this, the rules actually change depending on the age-restricted commodity you're trying to buy. For alcohol sales, that Nexus or Sentry card, perfectly acceptable. But if you walk into a cannabis retail dispensary, it is strictly prohibited. Why? Well, because cannabis is still heavily restricted at the federal level, and those trusted traveler cards are federally operated programs. It is a brilliant example of how complex state and federal laws literally collide right at the cash register. That brings us to Section 3, spotting a fake ID, the actual physical inspection. Okay, so we know what documents are acceptable, but how do we know this specific piece of plastic in our hand isn't a really clever forgery? This is where checking ID gets tactical. To do this efficiently, compliance professionals use a fantastic little mnemonic anchor called the FLAG method, FLAG. Feel, look, ask, and give back. It's this quick, chronological process that takes just a few seconds, but is incredibly effective at catching fraudulent documents before a sale ever happens. Let's start with those feel and look stages. When you're holding a real ID, it has very specific tactile markers. You want to feel for smooth, rounded edges, rigid cardstock, and features like laser-engraved tactile text. Like, you should literally be able to feel the raised date of birth rubbing your thumb over it. A fake ID, on the other hand, often gives itself away physically. You might feel peeling lamination, bumpy surfaces, or a card that just feels way too flexible and rubbery. And when you look closely under good lighting, fakes often reveal blurry microprint or holograms that just don't shift right when you tilt them. Then we have the Ask test, which focuses entirely on the behavioral side. See, most fake IDs today aren't actually fake documents. They're real, valid IDs borrowed from an older sibling or friend who kind of looks like them. It's called identity sharing. So checking ID here means asking simple questions to break their script. Even with the real ID, sure, we all sweat a little when a bouncer asks for our zip code. But if someone pauses, looks nervous, or, my personal favorite, answers with the number 8 instead of August for their birth month, that hesitation is a massive red flag. Finally, if the card fails these tests, the G stands for give back. You simply hand the ID back, maintain control of the scene, and refuse service.
Moving into Section 4, Scanners and Privacy Laws. Welcome to digital verification.
The tactical, physical inspection is obviously vital, but the landscape of checking ID is shifting super fast toward digital verification. In March 2025, the OLCC launched the CAMP portal to centralize compliance management. Then, a huge shift happened in January 2026. Senate Bill 1005 allowed businesses to roll out universal scanning. This means a store can require literally every single customer, no matter how old they look, to have their ID scanned. And by February 2026, the TSA even implemented Confirm ID for travelers who didn't have real IDs. The technology to instantly and digitally verify age is just becoming ubiquitous.
But, as you can imagine, with all this digital scanning comes a massive privacy mandate. Under Oregon law, specifically ORS 807.750, businesses face a very hard rule. Verify and clear, not verify and store. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that while a bar or a grocery store can scan your ID to read the barcode and mathematically prove you're 21, they are strictly prohibited by law from storing that personal data to build up some sort of customer database. The machine literally has to wipe your personal information the second the age verification transaction is complete.
And finally, Section 5, the good faith defense. Let's talk legal protections.
So what actually happens legally if a server does everything right, follows the flag method, maybe even uses a scanner, but a highly sophisticated fake still manages to slip through? Are they just automatically a criminal? Well, Oregon law offers a vital layer of protection known as the good faith defense. ORS 471.135 basically states that if a licensee properly checked the ID, they are found to have committed no crime, quote, unless it is demonstrated that a reasonable person would have determined that the identification exhibited was altered. So if you're diligent, you follow your training, and the fake is so unbelievably good that a reasonable person wouldn't spot it, the law has your back. But remember, this powerful defense only exists if you actually took the time to do a proper job checking ID in the first place.
So I have to ask, do you truly know what's hiding in your own wallet? The next time you hand over your ID for a quick scan or a visual check at the door, take just a second to think about the complex legal framework, the forensic training, and the strict privacy laws that all spring into action in those few short seconds. It is not just a piece of plastic with a bad photo of you. It's a heavily regulated key to accessing age-restricted worlds, backed by an entire ecosystem of compliance. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking questions about the everyday processes we just take for granted.